summarized at the end.
Perfect.
Again, this is from, well, this letter is addressed to the planning board in regard to the proposal of subdivision of 33 and 41 Pleasant Street. My name is Kathleen Grant. I have resided at 27 Pleasant Street for 45 years. This proposed subdivision directly abuts my property line, and the following are a list of my concerns. One is noise factor. Jackhammers, trucks coming and going and beeping that happens especially when they back up. And at the old quarry with the ledge and the boulders, could they use the old dump road to access the site? The question she's asking during the construction period. This town doesn't apparently have a ruling and needs a ruling to address the noise issue. She suggests, and this is something I discussed at length with her previous to knowing I was going to be reading this letter, and agree with her. It makes a lot of sense to me. She suggests a starting time of 8 a.m., this is during the construction period, and a finishing time of 4 p.m., out of concern of the people needing peace and quiet in their homes, the peaceful enjoyment of their own homes in the neighborhood. What she doesn't have written here, we discussed at length, and we think that makes sense. It'd be Monday through Friday. So the construction, it'll be significant construction, doesn't happen Sundays and Saturdays. 2, congestion. This one-way section of Pleasant Street. This is a major traffic cut-through from 6:45 to 9:30 a.m., and again at 4:30 to 5:45 p.m. Plus parking on both sides of the street near the cookie factory, and adding 9 more homes to this scenario with their children will need some sort of traffic control, at least during the construction, i.e. policemen. And I'm reading it directly from here. Number 3, strain on utilities. They're planning to tap into water, sewer, electric, and gas in this small section. Is the new road a private or public utility? And what about streetlights? And I know that was discussed here, and she would have noted that. 4 is insurance. This insurance is another interesting area that I discussed at length with her, and I think makes sense, and this may be standard operating procedure. We just did not know. Is this construction company bonded and insured for resulting damage to any properties due to and during the construction? And with the possibility of a potential developer going bankrupt, is there bonding and insurance to prevent or handle the cleanup of the site if something like that would happen? And she says here, I have an artesian well, which might be in jeopardy of contamination during the construction, and would that be protected if the company were bonded and insured? And by the way, she does have an artesian well, and for years, I can tell you, I drove by the small sign her husband Jeff had out saying Hidden Brook. There is a hidden brook that she notes comes under the property, and they did an artesian well deep below it to provide water for their property. Anyway, aside. Number 5, and this is the last point, since I'm a direct abutter to noise and construction, this will impinge on my ability for my peaceful and quiet enjoyment of my property. To that end, I am requesting an adjustment to my real estate taxes for the duration. And it's signed, thank you for taking this into consideration. Sincerely, Kathleen Grant from 27 Pleasant Street. So Kathleen is only 2 of the abutters, people in the neighborhood that I recall are still there. When I moved in 30 years, and she's been there 45 years. So I'm going to leave that with you,
Great,
Madam
thank you.
Chairman. And I hope, thank you.
Yep.
I hope you could, at the appropriate time, address if it's reasonable or feasible to have those hours of operation and avoid weekends and the insurance issue.
Yep.
And thank you for your time and everything you do for the town.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to speak? No? In that case, Paul, you can come forward and address the questions that we had on truck access, the start and ending times and days of the week, congestion and traffic detail, the insurance issues and bonding, and the artesian well. I'm afraid the real estate taxes are out with our jurisdictions, so.
Regarding the construction access, there is no other access from behind the property. Quarry, the town access road doesn't directly connect to this property, so we couldn't get through there if we want to. Plus, 100-foot no disturb area is very close to the town property line. There's very little room to get through there. I think we can manage the construction in a way that won't create a lot of disturbance in the neighborhood during the construction of the roadway. Regarding the hours of operation, we just anticipated working under the standard hours that have been issued in previous subdivisions, and weren't looking for anything different than that. I'll let Mr. Celebrity address the bonding and his company's issues, insurance. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, yes, we do, we are bonded and insured. We have the standard general liability, workman's comp, and then umbrella policies as well. So up to, I think, 10 million.
Protection of the artesian well? We'd probably have to check the location first.
Yes,
but that's
we'd have
something
to-
we'd want you to follow up with.
Have our engineer located. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but we don't intend to do any blasting, so I'm sure we can avoid, and it doesn't appear on that side, on Ms. Grant's side, that there's going to be ledge where those homes are going in that are butt her from the test holes we did earlier.
What sort of a fence is there on the Grant property line?
I believe it's a wooden fence, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a 4-foot.
Yeah, it's a 5-foot wooden fence I think she has on her property right now. Some of the neighbors might prefer fence and some may want plantings. That's something we discussed with them and before we made a final decision of what we'd install for a buffer.
And traffic control during construction, especially during the hours. It is quite an impressive cut through. It's amazing how quickly people can come off Randolph and
Oh, yes.
swing into that area. So have you considered how you're going to deal with the unexpected surprise of a few construction trucks for them when they attempt that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have your standard, construction entrance with, with 6-foot fence around the perimeter of the site, and there's the cuts and fills. There's not a lot of material leaving the site, so we're going to try to manage the materials on site to limit the amount of trucks entering and exiting the site.
We might consider, board members, when we discuss this further, we may want to consider asking for some sort of sign up on the junction between Randolph and Pleasant to give people fair warning that,
Construction, seek alternate routes.
yes, exactly. Maybe we could leave that up permanently.
I would like to say that,
Park a truck right across the
We could prepare a traffic management plan.
That would be very helpful.
It's a simple
Yeah.
plan that'll show, all the signage, the construction entrance, the gate, the fencing, and then you could comment on that.
I mean, the good thing is Mr. Celebrity is going to do all this construction himself. He has his own company that will do all the site work, so it's not like he's bringing in a contractor who might not be aware of all the
Right.
important things the neighborhood is looking for.
Yes, Brian?
Could we just go back to hours for a minute? So you're looking for standard hours. Could you just help us define that? Is it, we were asked for 8 to 4 and Monday to Friday, so can you just specifically respond to those two things?
Most companies work Saturdays. We'd definitely like to work Saturdays. The more hours we get it, the quicker the work gets done. 8 is a relatively, somewhat of a late, I think the town bylaws allow a 7 o'clock start in the morning. So do you have any preference on that? Or?
I would prefer 7, and Saturdays would be just as needed, pretty much.
Right.
So 7 to 3 or 3:30.
We might want to define the as needed. I think heavy construction on Saturdays, but
That's fine.
we can talk about that more as we work our
Try
way
to
through the
limit that.
program.
Typically, it's a Monday through Friday work week for us.
Yes.
On the St. Pius property, the
Yes.
Windmere, we came to an agreement there about people being able to arrive on site, I believe it was.
Yes.
And then the equipment deliveries couldn't start as soon as people could arrive on site.
Right, that's
So
correct.
that might be something we refer back
pull that from Winmere
Pull
and have a
that, yeah.
look. Yeah, we should pull that out and see what that is.
Yeah,
That's a
something
good
like
idea.
that would be fine, you know, we wouldn't have 6 AM deliveries and things like
Yeah.
that that disturb the neighborhood.
And certainly managing, I think to your point on the traffic management plan, making sure that you don't have 3 large trucks arriving simultaneously
Right.
to, any other questions from board members? If not, it looks like we are continuing this. Obviously, we're going to want you to respond to the engineer's letter. Bill, you've got something?
I would like you to address the stormwater review, which, if you can do that now, I can set that up. Otherwise, we're pushing back a few more weeks.
Yes, stormwater review.
That goes back
Who's
to,
going to review it?
we go back to Mrs. Eggleston.
Town
Okay.
engineer doesn't have capacity at the moment?
They asked that it go to,
Okay.
well,
Which is traditional.
Sometimes he does it, sometimes
they're losing one
he
of their
reviewed it.
engineers.
Oh,
Oh, well, that doesn't help. Okay, so yes, can we get that started?
Ask them, not me.
Can we get the stormwater review started?
Yes, do we contact directly and submit the plans, or will the?
I will, you'll give
planning
them to
office.
me and I'll get them to her.
Okay.
She actually, who are you using at CEC? Who's your lead person?
Kent,
Ken,
Ken?
yeah.
I'll have her call Ken.
Is there a retainer required for services?
We'll talk.
Leave that to Bill. So then our next meeting, which was originally scheduled for November 12th, and we have a conflict. I know you sent out a poll, Tim. Did you come up with a
I got a few
date that
responses.
worked?
Can you poke that over?
I think it was on the 12th. I thought it was for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Well, I was told
How many,
somebody had a
Dan?
conflict on the 12th, if that's
I
not
do.
true. Yes, okay.
So, the previous Thursday, the 5th, looks no good. The next Thursday, the 19th, as far as what I heard, is okay. And then, I mean, I don't know what the appetite is for other days of the week. But the 4th, the 18th, the 16th, the 24th, the 25th, the 27th are no good. But otherwise,
So the 19th is looking really good, guys. What do you think?
pretty late. What about the Monday after the 12th?
Monday after the 12th, the 16th,
16th?
not great.
Okay.
One of the few days that isn't wide open.
17th?
No.
Okay.
Pushing right up to the 19th.
Is that 16 because of your schedule or rooms?
It's because of the schedule of
Various
certain board
planning board
members.
members.
These board members.
What else is currently scheduled right now?
We have nothing else scheduled, right? I mean, we have
On
the
that
12th
meeting.
scheduled, but
The 17th.
17th I have open, but other people may
I
not.
do not.
Why
Okay,
don't we do
so
the 19th?
I think the 19th's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I have a potential conflict, so that's why I'm wondering if you just keep it the 12th and I can watch the meeting.
Okay,
Assuming you're not going to vote that night, I'm happy to just watch the meeting.
all right, then let's keep it the 12th in that case. Brian will watch the meeting.
Great.
So you,
Excellent.
the 12th?
7:15 on the 12th? We don't have anything else scheduled, do we, yet?
No, I don't.
All right, 7:15 on the 12th it is.
But we will probably be further discussing there on,
Yeah. So we'll
Oh,
get the
then that-
public
On the
hearing.
12th.
Then that doesn't work, because I've already missed one.
The 5th?
so that,
Let me look
Back
at
to
the 5th. How
19th?
many people had conflicts on the 5th?
Just one.
That would be me. Let me have a look at my calendar. My 2 sets of calendars.
Oh, yeah, I also have a conflict on the 5th, but
I already have a
You
same
don't
on
have to
the 5th.
vote, however, so you're
Yeah.
good.
doesn't make a difference.
Hang on. Let me
Oh,
just
no, I
check.
don't. No, I'm all set on
You're
the
leaving
5th.
on the 6th.
I'm easy peasy on the 5th, yeah.
All
5th.
right, let me look at my 5th. I can make the 5th. Oh, no, sorry, I can't make the 5th. I was looking at the wrong part. I absolutely cannot make the 5th. I have a client meeting.
well, you said two different things.
Yes, well, I was looking at the wrong part of the schedule.
I could do the
How about the
4th.
4th?
How about the 9th?
I could do the 4th.
I can also do the 9th.
and I could do the 9th.
Those are both okay for me.
9th, anybody else have an issue?
I'd
with
like the 9th.
Ninth it is.
Day of the
Ninth
week
is
is the ninth.
Monday.
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 I'll need you on my
Daughter that night.
All right, so the 9th at 7:15. Great, thank you.
Works, thank you.
We can talk about other dates towards the end of the meeting. All right. Next on the schedule is our continued discussion of Thayer Nursery. You should have handed out tonight, where did mine go? You should have another number of things that were handed out tonight, one of which is a letter from an insurance agency about lighting, one of which is Chapter 48 zoning, Section 3, which is, I'm not sure who put that in there. And then you have the draft special permit. You will see that it says last updated October 22nd with my initials on it. It has page numbers, always useful. That is what we're going to be working from. So it should have been handed out in the material. Yes, keep going. Cheryl, I just saw it.
No, but
There you
that
go.
one, this, okay, got it, this one.
Yeah, as long as it says October 22nd, 2015, my initials, that is the one we're going to be using.
And this,
And that, yeah, those were all other items in there. Oh, there was an email from Mr. Johanning in there as well, which you guys can read all the extra meat stuff. But let's start with the draft special permit. We are going to be going through it. As you know, the public hearing is now closed, so we're going to be going through the draft special permit item by item. I understand that the applicant has some questions about some of the provisions that are in here, so obviously we get those. If you have questions for the applicant as we go through this, please direct them to me. Because we're in a public meeting and not a public hearing, there is going to be no public comment. So you'll see when you look at the draft special permit, first of all, I understand in one of the newspapers it was announced that we had approved the application, and I just want to clarify that that is not true. The question for the board at the last time was simply whether I should be drafting something for us to discuss in the positive or the negative, and I understand that must have gotten mistranslated. So I want to just clarify to everybody that no vote of either approval or denial has been taken by the planning board on this. Text in bold is boilerplate language that you will have seen in other special permit decisions that we've done. Underlined text within that boilerplate indicates where the language has been changed to be specific to this application. Red text indicates missing information or a question the board needs to answer as part of our deliberations. Green text is text directly taken from section N. Now, not all of the text in here. Some of the text in here is in black. It's been taken from section N, but that was coming out of the draft order of conditions that we've been working from. Blue text indicates language taken from one of the special permits or the 2001 decision from the ZBA. So I'm going to walk you through it, and then we'll stop at the appropriate points. The first part is a boilerplate language that says, we are the special permit granting authority, that we're doing this under section 3, subsection N, that we are, obviously, if the board approves it, granting a special permit for a landscaping business use, identifies the owner and the applicants, and refers to them as applicant, identifies the lots of land, and we need to actually talk about the lots of land. There are 3 in the vicinity of where we've been doing our site walks, 270 Hillside Street, 0 and 24 Forest Street. There are also 217 and 237 Hillside Street. I believe the applicant had indicated that the landscaping equipment needs access to those for accessing compost and other items stored on there. So we need to talk about putting those, how we deal with those. It then goes to say that the special permit is going to be constructed, the conditions that require construction will be constructed as shown on the plan with X number of sheets, and that we're referring to those as site plan, and that we're granting site plan approval, again, if the board agrees to do that. The next section, I'll just run you through the sections and then we'll come back and do them in detail. Section 1, authorized development, is what talks about the things that are actually being physically constructed on the site. So the fence is being physically constructed, the drainage improvements, the land repair yard. It requires that they be maintained. And we're not authorizing the expansion of anything that has been granted by a special permit. Again, this is all up for discussion. Section number 2 is authorized uses. You'll see pulled out quite a bit from the zoning on that. And then notes that notes what they can do. If you remember from the zoning, there's a definition of the landscaping business. And then there are things that the landscaping business is allowed to do under the zoning, and then there are things that the landscaping business may do if this planning board allows it. So that pulls in everything from the zoning that we have talked about in the past. We also talked about not allowing things that weren't in the zoning, and so there's a section on that, a section on hours. 3 basically says, again, that this is site plan approval and that there's conditions for that. 4 is the zoning compliance and the special permit requirements, and that's where most of the conditions from the draft that we've been discussing come into that. So purpose of the special permit, which we'll talk about later, business uses, employees, vehicles, materials, firewood, parking, mitigation. Then we do the determination of the compliance with the standards for the grant of the special permit, and that talks about the without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial derogation from the intent to the purpose of the bylaw. This is all boilerplate. And then required of compliance with all matters. So we have enforcement, requires the applicant to allow access to all lots under the special permit for the purpose of inspection to the building inspector and his designee at any time. Drainage, fence and landscaping, lighting, signs, the specific rules for vehicles, noise, on-site traffic loading and deliveries, outside truck traffic, street improvements, dumpsters, storage of mulch and compost, storage of fertilizer, storage of firewoods, and the operations surrounding those, snow and ice operations. Then something that we haven't discussed before, but in the zoning is the term. The zoning allows us to do an initial term of 3 years or fewer, and then how they would, then the zoning allows a renewal of additional terms of 5 years or shorter period, and it sets up how they would apply for that renewal, which is not specified in the zoning. The zoning actually specifies there are 2 ways that it can be revoked. Obviously, we could choose not to renew it when it comes up in front of the planning board again. The zoning specifies that it can also be revoked by the Board of Appeals upon application by the building commissioner. And discussion of how it be transferred to a third party if we vote to allow that. And then the final boilerplate is the recording with the Registry of Deeds. There's also one appendix. Obviously, the plans would be attached, but there's one appendix so far, which is the stormwater operations and maintenance plan that the applicant submitted. So that's the basics of it. I think we should start at the beginning and walk our way through. So I would start, I think you all have comments on the earlier draft that you've seen. There are some changes from that, and we can go through that as we go. So if you want to start.
Really quick, on the top, 0 and 2 Forest Street.
Oh.
24 Forest Street.
0 and 24, yeah, thank you, Forest Street. So probably the first question becomes, since it's at the beginning there and called out in red, do we include 217 and 237 Hillside Street as well? So.
I guess my thinking on that, I had called that out here.
Yeah.
It seems like we should include them
Okay.
on the basis that we're defining what each lot is being used for. So while they're included in the application, I think the inclusion in the application doesn't by inclusion necessarily give those lots any rights.
Well, this is now including it in the special permit. So we are now setting the conditions. And when we get to the part where there is different language from the Board of Appeals, I put that in for reference so you can see it. By granting a special permit, we may or may not choose to either keep it, modify it, or discard it, depending on what we choose to do. So right now, the the applicant has stated that they use different lots for different purposes. The question has been, the question is, do we limit the landscaping uses to 270 Hillside and 0 and 24 Forest, or do we feel that they do in fact have reason
See.
to access the other two for the purpose of the landscaping? Because remember, that's what we're authorizing, and so we need to continue to include them.
So, I understand what you're saying. So Article 2, Section 2 has a use table that specifically defines what lots are used for what purpose.
Article 2, Section 2 no longer has that use table.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That is
Okay.
one of the changes.
Okay.
And that was
Now I
after a
understand.
conversation with town council.
Okay, so then I'm gonna revise my statement and say that I don't necessarily think they should be included. I'm just
Okay.
hearing what others say. My statement was based on
Yes.
being able to include them in that use table.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there was a.
I'll try to
we
look
are-
at both
we
at the
are
same,
to-
I'll look at
to-
both at the same time.
We are to, there are some changes.
Okay.
We are to keep to authorizing the zoning and authorizing the landscaping business.
Okay.
Yes.
237 or on the other side of the street?
Yes, they're the one that's a little bit further down, so.
Were there any
Is
plans?
the name of the hospital?
Yeah, we actually, the
what-
first site walk, we went down to them.
And
There
I'm just
were
trying to remember that what we saw on those plans was,
mulch.
what was it? It was related
Compost.
to nursery or was it
Compost.
related to landscaping? I can't recall.
So if that's a question you want it. Bill? 217 and 237 Hillside. Your views on including them in the special permit, allowing landscaping use on those.
I think you should.
And,
If the truck goes in,
okay.
you want to be able to.
And they're accessing mulch and compost, and then that allows us to regulate any activity on those sites under the landscaping business.
Under the landscaping business.
Okay. So you're all comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I guess I'm comfortable with that. I'm just curious as to whether they can do landscaping. I mean, how do they store mulch over there under the landscaping business without having
I think it's more
bins?
compost than mulch.
Okay,
The mulch is at the other site. This is just,
okay. Fair enough. It allows us
They
to
empty
govern,
their
it
truck
allows
and
us
then
to
pick it
govern
up
them, so
again.
I think they should be included.
All right,
I have a comment.
yes.
If you look at section 3 of, or paragraph 3 of the zoning, it says a landscaping business may be located on a lot or lots in conjunction with other uses permissible in a residence district, including residential use, provided that if there shall be any involvement between the landscaping use and another use, the requirements of this subsection shall apply to that other use.
Yes.
So it has to be clear that there is no involvement between the uses, the landscaping use and any other use, because if there is, we've got to address it.
So on page 2, section 2, authorized uses, paragraph 2, 222, what we have is pretty much the same thing you just said, Alex. Under subsection N3, a landscaping business may be located on a lot or lots in conjunction with other uses permissible in a residence district, including residential use, an agricultural use defined by and conducted in accordance with MGL C-128S1 and MGL C-40A-S3, and a greenhouse and/or nursery use is defined by and conducted in accordance with section 3, subsections 4B and 7D of the zoning bylaws of the town of Milton. If there is any involvement between the landscaping use and another use, the requirements of this, actually it should say this special permit rather than subsection, this special permit shall apply to that other use.
I'm not sure that there is an agricultural use on this site. It seems to me there's a nursery use and a residential use, and if there may be an agricultural use, but there may not be. So I don't think that you should necessarily posit that there is one.
We should, this is now the board, this is a we rather than an
That
I.
the
So you are
permit should
suggesting,
posit that. I mean, if there is an agricultural use on a lot, that's fine. Then it can be, it can remain, but it does seem to me that saying that there is an agricultural use on these premises is
that's why the table came out.
giving away giving away something that is,
But you-
it could be, it could be
They store
contested.
trees there now.
This
What?
doesn't
They
say
store
it's an
trees there
agricultural.
now.
Yeah, right.
Is that
Could be an
nursery
agricultural.
use?
The table did, which is
Nursery.
why the
Table
table
did.
came out.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing. And that's why,
But that's not agricultural, that's nursery.
no, nursery is agricultural.
Oh, no,
It
no, no, we are
isn't.
not doing that argument here. Just
But
take
it-
that
but
one
it
right
isn't.
out.
It isn't.
Yes.
Nursery is not agricultural,
No,
Read the bottom
no, 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 no.
not
We
under
are
our
governing the
zoning.
landscaping.
In any case, it doesn't say there's agricultural here, so.
It doesn't
it's a
say.
moot
It says
point.
if there, it says it may exist on the lot. It does not say that there
There
is.
is existence on that.
So it's fine the way it is.
Yes.
Okay, so leave. All right,
I have a question about the
Yes.
applicant.
yes.
Now, the initial applicant in 67 was Robert Oldfield and Margaret T. Oldfield.
Yes,
And I can certainly see that Aggie and Josh are successors. And I just wonder how we're including
On
the
page
Oldfield Family LLC and the Thayer Nursery Corp. And what happens if one of them drops out? Or what happens if they all drop out and the Thayer Nursery Corp is left and sold to someone else?
that is a very good question.
All right.
And I was kind
Address
of
that
hoping
later, don't you?
somebody would bring it up. So I don't know the answer to that. I know why it's in here, and I can tell you that. How the board wants to deal with it is another matter. So on the application, this is page 1, bottom paragraph. On the application from the applicants, they list the owner, which is the Oldfield Family LLC, and the applicants, Josh Oldfield, Maggie Oldfield, and the Thayer Nursery Corp. You are absolutely correct. Of course, in 1967, the special permit was granted to Robert Oldfield and his wife, Margaret, Margaret T. Oldfield. The 1987 permit, and it was only to them, not to anybody else. The 1987 permit added Maggie and Josh, which gives them standing to apply for this. I put everybody that was listed on the application in so that the board can discuss it. The question is a good one because the Thayer Nursery Corp. And Oldfield Family LLC have lives, as it were, as entities beyond the lifespan of Josh and Maggie. And I think this comes into play both in this initial section and then on the, in that last section where I talked about
Sold.
it being sold, page 11, number 12, in the event that the land and business is transferred to a third party, said third party shall seek to continue operation of landscaping business use, then a new special permit application shall be required under the provisions of section 3N. The other possibility of doing that, of course, is not allowing the sale of the business, in which case you may want to say, look, it's just to Maggie and Josh, and if anybody else comes in, they don't get the.
What-
Isn't that what it in essence says?
Wh-
You're
what-
right, you're giving them a permit. If they try to sell it to anybody else, the other people have to come back to you.
But the way, by putting.
You've got to define business.
But
I
by-
mean, what is the business?
It would be the landscaping
No,
business that we're
but I
permitting.
understand, but is
Right.
it their nursery corps? Is that the
Yes.
business? Well, but
Well, I mean, no,
if
no, no,
that's the
but I mean, that's not
business,
my
you
answer.
have to say
That's
so.
my, no, that's my affirmative, that's the question.
That is the question.
is the
What is
question.
the business that be sold?
So if you are you granting, are we, the planning board, granting this solely to Maggie and Josh, who at some point may retire, stop the business whatsoever, seek to sell it to somebody else, in which they would have to come back in? Are you granting it to Thayer Nursery Corp. as an entity who then could sell it on to somebody else? They'd still have to come back into the planning board, but my question is, who do you want to grant the special permit to? I put it in for everybody who applied. but
Who
do
is
you want to
their
grant it
nursery
to?
corp?
Who are the people behind Thayer Nursery Corp.?
I mean, unless we knew that, we wouldn't know if they sold it or what they did with it, because we wouldn't know who owned it to start with.
It seems to me that we'd want to allow the owners, and if their nursery corp is part of the ownership, that we'd want to allow the owners an opportunity to not devalue their business by not being able to sell it to somebody who would have an opportunity to come in and ask for a special permit to continue the operation of the business in the manner that it had been conducted. So it seems as if, the individuals, Maggie and Josh, have children and family members. Why would we put such a restriction on ownership if we're asking the new owner to come in and get a new special permit?
So just to clarify, we're not putting a restriction on ownership, we're putting a restriction on who is granted the special permit. Potentially putting a restriction on who is granted the special permit.
So,
But
just-
there's no, if the special permit is granted to people who don't own a business, I'm not sure I'm understanding the distinction.
I'm not sure how we grant an individual a permit to for a business use. I think my understanding would be we would grant this to a business, and the business would operate, in this particular case, under the old fields. I suppose we could restrict the business to operate under the old fields. That would seem unusual to
You
me.
cannot grant it just to Thayer Nursery. Maggie and Josh have to have the grant as individuals because it is their ability to inherit from their father under the 87 that allowed, they were named under the 87 permit, and the zoning requires that somebody who had
Do we need to
that permit.
restrict it to them being the only
The
holders?
only
of
thing-
I'm asking if
That
you
is the
want to.
question. I
Yes,
understand.
yes.
So theoretically, I mean, we could theoretically, I think this original special permit limited it to Oldfield and his heirs, so it left it as a family business, didn't it?
Let me pull it out.
You have restricted it here, right? The only thing that seems to be missing
Well, we
to
haven't
me-
because we haven't voted on it. That's,
Well, no, but the only thing that seems to be missing to me is who
Where's the
is
transfer? Where's the which page
their
is it?
nursery corp. And after
so we
that,
can have that asked. We had that information at one point. I was going to look it
you
up.
can
but I
put
need
an
to-
appendix in, it says, look at appendix A and identify who it is, but
Well, why do you have to, it says it goes to
no.
Oldfield,
I've got the
well,
decision
Bob
here. I've got
Oldfield
it.
or his successors in interest. And,
So it's not limited to a
No.
relation,
No,
it's
no,
a
no, no,
successor
guys,
in
hold
interest?
on.
it
Okay,
says
I've got it right
successors
here.
in interest, and, the
So
pla-
67 says this permit runs to you personally, including any assistance only, and shall not be assigned or transferred to any other person.
Okay.
87 says, it amends that to read, this permit runs to the applicants and their children personally, including any assistance only, and shall not be assigned or transferred to any other person.
Okay, that's that permit.
Yes.
And so.
So the
their-
question
their
is-
The question is, who is the LLC and the Thayer Nursery Corp., are they successors in interest or not? Because if they're not successors in interest, then presumably they wouldn't get a permit. And then the question, it seems to me, is that what happened if Maggie and Josh both say, well, we're out of here, leaving Thayer Nursery? There's nothing to say, I mean, is that going to be a significant event? I mean, if it is, the permit should say so. Does there always have to be continuity of all four individuals sort of being together, or can one drop out, et cetera? I mean, if they can drop out, then there should be a provision that the planning board can give permission for this to happen.
you said successes in interest. I didn't hear that. All I heard was children.
Successors in interest is not in here.
Then all it
The
is
permit
children.
runs to the applicants and their children personally, including any assistance only, and shall not be assigned or transferred to any other person.
So the Oldfield family is apparently, is
I believe
to
the
me,
yeah.
kind of obviously family.
Well, Oldfield Family LLC, though, it's an LLC, it's a
Yeah,
limited liability.
true,
yeah.
true.
So just
But
to
if we
clarify that.
identify who's behind the Oldfield Family LLC and Thayer Nursery Corp., and if those are children, then we're all set. And
Okay.
if anything
The-
changes on here, then they should need an amendment. If
The
one person
zoning-
drops out, then it needs to be
The
amended.
zoning talks about predecessors in interest,
Yeah.
that
Would
the
have been
applicant or
Robert and
applicants or
Margaret,
their predecessors in interest on that date held a special permit or use variance. I guess it is Maggie and Josh who are the people who hold this permit. So I guess maybe if there's good reason to include someone else, we should know it.
All right.
We should-
So then we have the question on the ownership. We were provided with that information. I do not have it in front of me.
I'm not going to.
So I think we should ask.
Then beyond that,
Yes.
just real brief. Brian.
Yeah.
On 12, the question come up, what business, in the event that the land and landscape business is transferred, wouldn't that take care of it?
Land
I'm sorry,
and
Mark,
landscape.
where were you?
Page 11,
Page
number
11,
12.
item 12.
Bottom.
Item 12?
What if the land isn't transferred?
And
Should say and/or.
Well, we're not concerned about the transfer of the land, we're concerned about the transfer of the business. But the
Right.
business could move
In
then
a sense,
off-site.
in a sense, we ain't if the business moves off-site.
And, yeah, well, that's true. So the land and the business are tied together. If the business
As far
is
as our permit's
transferred-
concerned,
Right.
the land and
yeah.
the business are tied together.
So if the business is sold and moved off-site,
They
then we
move
don't
to
worry about
Randolph
it.
or
Right, exactly.
Chelsea.
Certainly, then they need.
But if the business is sold and they stay on site,
Well, that's why we keep the land and the business.
I would propose, I would be in favor of at least allowing the same concession that the 87 permit gives and allow this to be transferred to the children of.
Megan.
Well, in essence, there's nothing to stop them from transferring it. They can't transfer the permit, they can ask to reapply, I suppose.
I mean, I think I think the question is who it's running to. I think we've answered the question that if they transfer it, they have to go
Right.
back for a new special permit. So that's section 12 covers that. The question is, would a succession to the children constitute a transfer? And I'm proposing that we copy the 87 language and say that the business transferring to the children would be outside of the bounds of what a transfer would be considered here.
That's fine.
Okay, so
They-
then 12 would not apply to the children of
Children
the
of the,
applicant.
Nobody asks that, but I think it's very generous.
Well, I think
of us
it's
to-
inconsistent with the 87
No, no, I
permit,
don't
and I
think
think the
it's-
intent was that this was a family business that we're trying to keep
Yep.
in known.
Okay. All right. So does that mean we're taking owner Oldfield family and their nursery corp off?
I think
Not
we've
not if we can
asked,
put the amendment, or appendix in the back that says that the owners of the LLC and the owners of their nursery are
Okay,
Maggie
so
and
an
Josh, and
appendix
that
that
would
identifies it. Okay,
be redundant.
I agree.
yep. Fine. I think that's a
well,
good
I
solution.
think that there are other
And if there's another
other
fam-
people involved.
If there's another family member in there, that's fine as well.
Okay,
Well,
so then
not
we'll,
necessarily, Mike.
It says he can
It says-
transfer it to his family. Children. And I'm assuming when I say other family members, there are other children.
so what we'll do is we'll add an appendix that identifies who they are, because I know we've had that information, I just don't have it in front of me. And then we can have one more review when we get that into the next iteration. All right, so the plan, which is starting on the top of page 2, the site plan will be the site plan, and we will get a final copy of everything, showing everything that we have put into here.
We need to look at this, we need to know what's going to be in that plan. I mean, not everything that's been submitted is going to be in it.
Right, we're telling them.
No, I understand, but we need a specification now of what the plan is.
Okay?
So we can see what's in the plan, what is said on the plan. I mean, an awful lot of this stuff requires that it be specified in the plan.
They did
And if we
submit
don't know what the
revised
plan
plans
is-
pretty recently,
I
right?
think we've gone through this quite a bit. I think it behooves the applicant to make sure that they've taken notes and covered everything and get it on the plan. And when they give us the plan, if it doesn't have everything we thought it would have or requested, then that'll only delay them.
So then we need
So
to
it
request the
behooves
plan
them
now.
to make it
We
right.
need to know what, if we're writing a permit and relying on what's written on the plan, we've got to know what's written on the
Sure,
plan.
sure, of course we do.
Okay. So when we get that plan, these particular items will be clarified on that.
Everything.
Yes? No, no, no,
Everything.
no, these particular,
Yeah.
in section 1, when we get the plan, the items that are in section 1 will be described based on what's in the plan. Now, later in this document, we already have some of those out there, the description of the fence, for
Location,
example.
yeah.
But this section, this authorized development is the part where we talk about the items that need to be constructed, yes.
Question as to whether we should add sprinklers, lighting, parking areas, Pedestrian areas and loading areas.
as items that are being constructed.
Mm.
Okay, so let me get that list again. Sprinklers, lighting,
On item 6.
Correct.
yeah.
I'm sorry, on what?
An item 6 on this list of what we're going
Probably
to expect to
actually
see
put it under
identified on the
3.
I
plan.
was gonna put it
Yeah.
under 3, right, yeah, exactly. But yes, I'm sorry, now I understand the number 6 reference.
Sprinklers,
Sprinklers,
lighting.
lighting, parking areas, pedestrian paths, loading areas.
This is what
Loading
we
slash
expect to be
storage areas.
clarified on the plan.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Loading and storage areas.
And storage areas, okay. All right,
I would say this, I'd say that authorized development is, this is very general. All these things are very general. They don't actually have any teeth.
Well, they
The
will
teeth
have the
come-
teeth, yes.
Teeth come later.
yes.
Or the plan will put some teeth into it.
No, but Alex's point is,
Well,
in the
that-
document, the teeth should come later. Yes?
My point is this, if you look at the zoning, under 4,
I'm always in favor of looking at the zoning.
it says,
They weren't.
an application for a special permit for landscaping business use shall include the following plans, rules, and specifications. And then it lists A through S.
Yes?
And then in 5, approval of plans, all these things are supposed to be
On the plan.
specified
Yep.
under these separate plans, these separate items.
Yes?
And they've given us the material, I think. They've given us a lot of material. And someone's got to go through it and take these various items out of that material so that we know what each of these plans is. Then it says, as part of the special permit, the planning board shall approve plans, rules, and specification which the board deems adequate under each of the foregoing paragraphs, insofar as the material submitted by an applicant with the application for a special permit may be inadequate or fail to advance the purpose of this subsection, the planning board shall require its revision. So what I'm suggesting is, rather than send it back to them and saying, we don't like this, first of all, we've got to know what the various plans are for these subparagraphs, and then we should review them, and we should specify whether each is adequate, because that's what the zoning says we have to do.
So,
It seems to me that this special permit should be structured to follow the zoning.
so if you start under zoning compliance, section 4 on page 3, you will see those categories, and then section 5, the conditions under there do in fact follow those. Now, some of those were repeated in both 4 and 7, so rather than repeat them multiple times, I have grouped them where they seem to be appropriate. But all of those categories have been covered in this special permit.
They may
Without
be
covering them
covered,
twice.
but do we have the plans they've submitted, like the rules for the operation of the business that they were supposed to submit? Do
So-
we have those rules?
What we have is incorporated from their application into this and has been pulled by Tim and myself from the materials that they gave us. What we have
Where are
is in
the
the
rules?
special. Well,
that they
let's
have-
see.
That they
Which
have,
part of
that
the
they have,
operation
that they
rules
have.
did you want?
I want the rules that they have established for the various things required by the zoning.
So we have the activity, the hours are in here, what they're allowed to do.
Have they
their
established
uses,
that as a
their hours.
rule?
We're establishing as a rule.
No, that's not what the zoning says. If that's what the zoning said, we could do that. But that's not what it says.
So we've got the
It
employees,
says a
we
list
have
of
the
the rules
vehicles, we have
proposed
the-
to be imposed by the special permit to ensure that vehicles and equipment are shut off and not idling,
Yeah,
that employees do their work efficiently and quietly.
yeah.
Earphones shall be required, CD players are in use. Loudspeakers and amplified music shall not be used in business
So,
operations.
noise on page 9, under 7. Landscape equipment, 7A, landscape
You're
equipment shall
jumping all
not be.
through this.
I'm not, I have
It's supposed to be in
grouped them.
one place.
Alex, the zoning has it in multiple places. I have grouped it
Has
into
it in
individual.
2 places.
Right, which is repetitive. I have grouped it so that everything that deals with noise is under noise. Everything that deals with on-site traffic and loading and deliveries is under that section. Everything that deals with the rule for a vehicle is under that section and is not scattered throughout.
So question? Mayor?
Yes.
Where we are referring to a set of documents, like the
What page
plans,
are you on?
right?
Yeah, the plans, yep.
On 2.
Okay, yes.
We're going to refer to actual sheets with dates, right? I mean, that's where the
Yes,
XXX is.
yes, that would go in.
I
And
guess,
if you remember, did we put the set of plans under the, I didn't bring the draft order of conditions with me. One of the orders of conditions we had actually listed out every single plan and what had to be in it. So I'll put that
You
back
could-
in this draft.
The one very simple thing we could do is, what I think you had to do, we could cross-reference here where it says parking. You could say, not C, but just drawing S12,
Right.
whatever. it is.
Yeah, and I had actually done that at one point and took it back out again.
Not everything's applicable. You
Yeah.
know, fence,
Right.
drawing X.
but,
Yeah.
and then also to,
You know, the fence is supposed to be shown on a plan.
It is.
And the landscaping is supposed to be shown around the fence on a
Yes, it
plan.
is.
right,
It is.
it
It
is.
is. We've received a plan that has it on there, and it will be because we have to attach it to the special permit.
So,
And
And
but
it shows
if,
the fence at the right elevation, right?
I don't know if this is the most current one,
That's,
but.
that's, I was gonna.
Yeah.
I think that's an
what I
old
say.
one.
Yeah.
Have we, I know, we have seen, I got
Right.
plans, but have we seen the final plan that they think is gonna be part of this?
But-
The applicant
Brian.
requested that we tell them when we were ready for them to do
I
that.
think we're
Right.
getting
Well,
ready.
they- I
think
we're
we're ready.
there.
Well, they
Yes,
could, they could
we are
take
there.
this, they could go and fix the plan and
I
say,
think
does
they
it meet
can.
what they did here? Because if it
Yes.
doesn't, we're gonna tell them, and
As
it's gonna
long as-
delay them,
yes.
not us.
I think you're
Okay,
correct.
so then,
Yes,
if I
I
may
agree.
continue.
Yes.
That's all I meant earlier. It'd be their best interest to make sure the plan meets what's in here.
Great,
Oh.
I agreed. But the other thing is, if we wanted to go back and ask them to update certain things, like here, there's a restatement of operations and mitigation plan dated June 15th. If, to Alex's point, he wants to be able, and I don't know if I'm misinterpreting you, Alex, you can correct me if I am, but if it's supposed to come from the applicant, then we could, just as we refer to drawings, we could go back and refer to particular materials that were submitted to us, instead of having to restate them all in the language of the permit. Is that true? These are more detailed. These might be even more detailed than what's contained in here. Just as we say, as according to the plan parking, we give a little description, but then we refer back to the plan. If we did the same thing on mitigation measures, we give a description, then we refer back to the actual documents that were submitted.
Reference,
appendix.
letter of.
As an
X.
appendix.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
one on the back
You
already.
could-
Yeah, so you could do the
Right.
same thing, if that covers
I'd just
Alex's
be-
question of, or point about needing
I
to
just be
have
careful
these.
that, you know, it being some kind of letter or long terminology, that it's what we're looking for. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, well, I
I
guess,
mean,
the-
I've been confused at times that they're originally gonna put up an 8-foot fence with a 6-foot panel.
Right, that's the
And it
issue,
was
because
only gonna
there's
go
been,
6
That was
foot
the
high.
old one. Now
Now
it's
it's two
before-
4.5-foot panels. So I would hope when they come back with a drawing, that it labels the fence as an 8-foot-high fence like they have in the past, the same materials, labels the materials in some kind of legend.
Shows a section.
Says there's 2 panels, labels the panels as coming from such and such a producer or, you know, manufacturer. Put some
So-
specs behind that, and that's what we get.
And
So
they have
that's-
to show the buildup of the wall.
That should be on the plan.
okay, so then if we said, if we went through this, if I may,
Yeah.
and it says, number 1, fence, sound attenuation related landscaping.
So you
So what we
actually-
could say then is not only refer back to where you've written it in further detail, but to say then, ask the applicant, in order to define this on your plans, we'd like to see it not only in horizontally where it's going to go on the drawing, but we would like to see, if you want to see confirmation, a section through a particular point of it where it shows
Overlapping the boundary.
if there's a berm and if there's a, the relationship of that and then the height and where the acoustic is being applied. So we can ask for that and then they can submit that to, before this is actually finalized, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Mm-hmm. So-
I don't think we could finalize this without agreeing that we're looking at a drawing, that we say, that's what we look for, that's what
Right,
we're
so as
asking
we
for,
work,
that's what we intended.
so
that's
instead
what we
of, so
get.
to be very clear though about what we're asking the applicant to provide, if we go through and we say, item 1, here's what we'd like to see, item 2, here's what we'd like to see on the plan, and work our way through.
That's in here.
that is in here.
I think it is. I think it is.
Okay, so then we move then, you're saying,
It's on
Emily,
page 7, fence
I
and
read through
landscaping.
this probably an hour or two before I showed up here, and I think everything we've talked about.
That's what I'm
Maybe you
trying
could
to
get
make
more
sure
specific,
tonight.
we can walk
Yes.
through it and say that and talk about it, but I think it's all pretty much covered.
That's why I'm making through, so in the previous special permits that we've done, we've had this section on authorized development, which gives a sort of short précis of what actual construction will be done, and then the details have been later in the special permit, which is how I set it up. So that's why I'm trying to move us through.
I'm sorry,
But the
I know you're trying to
details-
move us through, but can I go back? I have
No,
a question
absolutely,
for
go
you
back, yes.
in the preamble
Oh,
on
and the
page 2.
preamble. Good stuff, preambles. Yes,
It says the proposed conditions required by this special permit shall be constructed as shown on a plan containing XX sheets.
yes.
I'm suggesting that we add, shall be constructed as shown and uses limited to areas depicted on. This may be in the wrong location, but I wanted to make sure that we're referencing the fact that the areas shown on the plan are in fact part of the requirements
Yeah.
here.
Does that throw a monkey wrench in the lots of land that are across the street?
I don't think so.
No, because we have drawings for those lots.
We
of
have
land,
drawings for
so
those. There were plans for that.
Those
Guess
should
I
be
just
continued to,
wasn't-
yeah.
I agree. There's been a few around.
They're probably on the-
Now, that actually brings up something else, which is originally, in some of my earlier drafts that I sort of kicked around on my computer, before doing something that it was useful enough to send out, I had mentioned each individual plan when I got to it. So, when it was at landscaping, I mentioned landscaping plan. We were on the parking, I mentioned the parking plan. And actually, I think some of these are still in here. When I was looking at older special permits, it just said all of the sheets are referred to as the site plan, and then throughout the special permit, it just referred you back to the site plan. Would you prefer, I think what I'm hearing is that you would prefer to have it reference the specific sheet. So if we're talking about parking, rather than just say, go look at the site plan, you'd like it to reference the parking plan on the sheet. Does that make, am
We
I hearing
need to
that
know
clearly?
what the sheets that encompass this plan are.
Yes, absolutely.
And they need to be listed. Do we need a list of the sheets so that we can each have a copy of the sheets and be able to look at the sheet in conjunction with reading the permit?
Yeah, I
Because
can-
that's how it works.
Well, your page 2, where you have the XX,
Yeah.
this should say, and I'm just off the cuff, using
Well,
letters,
you've got
numbers
the
for
name of the
terminology.
sheets,
This
yeah.
should say drawing sheet S1 through S6.
Exactly.
Right.
And you see
But
in
then when
red,
we
it
get to
has named the
parking,
sheets.
it should
Yes.
say S2.
Right.
And in my mind, unless I'm misinterpreting or saying something that's not even necessary to say, it's going to be all right to say parking, CS2, fence, CS2, lights,
Yeah,
CS3.
yes,
Right.
if they've put multiple things on there, yeah, I think that's fine.
And it's clear enough, then
Yes. We're talking about parking. Parking is depicted on S2 or whatever, and we're good, yeah.
It seems to me that if we have the plan that we're going to require revisions to, which is the way it will work, I gather, that you've got to change this so that it is in accordance with what we want. We need the sheets. We
Yes.
need to know the
I
sheets.
don't think there's any
I'm
disagreement
hoping the
there,
next
Alex.
time that they give us those sheets,
Well, no,
everything is going to
we-
apply.
They have given us the material. We are now determining which parts of that material are going to be attached to this permit. And some of the plans are going to have to be changed, but we have to specify the changes on the plans that we want, and we have to know what the plans we're looking at are.
Right. There's no disagreement with you.
All right.
Well, again,
But
we're on
we
the same
don't know
page
that yet.
We're on the same page that
We need those,
the engineer was still doing things with the drainage in conjunction with the abutters engineer. Ned at one point in time did say, rather than reiterate, when we get near the end, then we'll revise the sheets.
right. We're now at the point where we have
Like I said
made
about the
sufficient-
6 foot, and pardon me for
Right.
interrupting, but the 6 foot and the 4 foot,
Yeah.
now we're to a point, this is what we're looking for.
Right.
So
This
take those
document
sheets,
tells
update
them how to
them,
revise their plans.
Exactly.
get it to us as soon as possible, so we can work it in conjunction with this and
So-
get to a conclusion. in
So
some
may I make a
form or sense.
suggestion? For those
Yes.
plans that we have, I don't think they're numbered. They have
They should be
titles.
numbered,
So I'd
yeah.
like to have them numbered.
Yeah.
And I'd only suggest, the chair, that you suggest to the applicants that they give us any literature they have, specifications on the sound attenuation material.
We
We have all that.
we do
It's
have
just
that,
we've
yeah.
got
I
a
just-
huge pile, but we've got several different kinds of attenuation.
Well, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking
Well,
for the
we
one,
have
they
to
want to use
choose.
X.
I
We
believe, Bill,
have
you
to
sent me the
choose.
final sound attenuating. Okay. All right, anything else on 1, authorized development? I think we're all in agreement, we would like the plans now. All right, 2, authorized uses. So, authorized uses, the number 1 authorizes it based on section N2 of the zoning bylaw and how it defines a landscaping business. And you'll see the green is directly from the zoning. Subsection N3, we've already talked about, so we can skip over that. Number 2, 3. This is the bit where it combines what the zoning allows a landscaping business to do with what we say it may do. I think the biggest thing in here that came up last time was the definition or how we deal with the idea of landscape ornamentations. So the applicant had provided us with a fairly broad definition. We had kicked around a couple of ways of limiting that to something that would actually be installed by a landscaper as part of a landscaping design. Was it fixed? Was there a wait? So I'm looking for feedback from the board on that.
Well, you might define it.
It's been defined, it's fixed, and installed by a landscaping, then it's like,
As
next
part of the
question is,
design.
do you?
Is that enough?
Do you
for the
define
board?
Where do you see
definition?
fixed?
So you guys, by you guys, I mean board members last time had
The
talked
building
about-
inspector has to be able to look at something
Yeah.
and decide whether or not it's a fixed landscape ornamentation. And if you leave this very vague language here, he's not going to have a clue. In
Needed- Yep.
fact, anything in this permit that isn't apparent to the building inspector is not going to happen.
We weren't provided with a list.
We were given a definition of landscape ornamentations. It was an extensive list. And to accept that particular definition would effectively allow the retail operations. Or it would permit retail operations because it was an extensive list of things that do not necessarily require a landscaper to install. So the question is, do we allow it at all? Landscape ornamentations at all? Do we attempt to find some sort of definition for it, or what?
I have a problem with the word ornamentation. I'm going to look up, I'm going to look at good old
Please.
Webster's for a
Why
moment.
don't you look at the Webster's?
But the zoning does contain that word. so,
If the board asks, then I'll
It
does
recognize.
contain
Well,
the
we're not
word.
required.
Landscape ornamentations.
It doesn't define
It
it.
may be authorized.
Yes.
Right.
we
Maybe.
do
So
not
it
have
does-
to.
and
may
does
not
not,
also.
Yeah.
So, a fixture is something securely and usually permanently attached or appended as to a house, apartment, building. So I think one of the things I had proposed last time was changing the word ornamentation to fixture.
Okay.
But what about if you had, let's say, a stone fountain or a stone ornament which needs a bobcat kind of
I had
delivery?
originally been thinking about that. Is there a weight or a size requirement?
I mean, that's
that you
generally,
could
that
use.
could be easily part of a landscape installation.
Yeah.
And it's not permanently fixed because it weighs so much.
So I guess my question on something like that is from a landscaping operation perspective. We're allowing them to sell these things, right? Okay. Just trying to figure out if they need to be on site, but.
You'd mentioned that before as a possibility, I think, in passing, is in one of the
I was thinking that, but couldn't
comments.
figure it out, something that they can plant in your yard.
But, you know,
That's
could
what
they
we have
have,
them all over
It's
there.
into a fountain, I mean, do we limit them to a display area?
where you can order it, but they can't actually,
It has to be shipped to the job site.
Landscape provides tools and labor.
It seems to me that if it is part of the deal, the landscape deal, you get a landscape design and say, you know, it has a fountain in it.
Right.
Then they can, in fact, do it if it's part of the landscape design that they're under contract to perform. And
So would that include a seating area,
a what?
furniture and a seating area?
Well, I mean, that is when you get your porch furniture and your,
Maybe a concrete bench, but not a,
Well, I mean, that was the other thing. I was
Probably-
I was
probably
just starting to
would be
go
a
there on
concrete
stone.
bench.
So I was just starting to go there with the fountain and maybe this bench. Maybe you have to limit them to materials, landscape ornamentation of that's fixtures or made of a stone material.
a natural material.
Natural,
A
yeah,
natural
that's
or
wood.
Natural
composite.
could
Oh, I
include a
like
wooden
that.
bench.
natural material.
Natural could include a teak bench or a teak dining set.
I suppose that's right.
Yeah.
So you're going to work on that?
I think we're working on it right now, Alex.
Right.
What about things like,
Steel
a
fire.
trellis? Is something
trellis
included
would
as
be fencing,
fencing?
right?
Okay. So there are, like,
Although, is that even in here?
Fencing is not in there.
A
it's not
steel
in here.
fire pit.
fencing's not allowed on here?
Steel fire pit isn't movable, as opposed to a one that's built with stone.
I
So
don't,
then,
versus,
we go back to the fixed versus movable.
once you put it in, it's not moving. But is it,
Well, unless
can I pick it up and put it in my truck?
Can you say immobile, fixed immobile? I mean, it seems to be saying the same thing, but, you know, fixed is something I could stab in the ground and say it's fixed there. But that would be mobile, so I could just take it out and move it.
You
15
could
feet
say
mobile.
stone or concrete. That would limit things a little bit.
Stone or concrete landscape ornamentations, fixed stone or
Well,
concrete landscape
I might suggest
ornamentation.
putting metal in there as well.
Except metal
Back
just,
to
you
folding
you
chairs.
get your,
Aluminum
that's your,
chairs, aluminum,
Don't you have a steel ornamentation to the right of your driveway?
I don't like the
no,
word
it's
ornamentation on there.
it's
No,
supposedly
the ornamentation is the
brass.
real problem because ornamentation becomes decorative.
It is
Right,
metal.
exactly.
It may be a sign, but that's another
But that's
discussion.
metal.
Do you put a size on it, so it's something that's of more substantial size?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do by